Good evening. Southbound is here. It's a Thursday night. It's really warm, but we're still hammering away. We've got a jam-packed agenda for you tonight, and the Southbound team is going to sound a little bit different this evening as we're one man down. Harrison has left the show this evening to attend the open-top bus parade of Arsenal's new signing, Victor Gyökeres. And I'm sure our wonderful fans will have to hear a lot of his name, which I didn't butcher, in future episodes. That's one for Harrison. He always takes the mick of me in intros, so I'm getting him back the one time that I can. Welcome in, Ed. How are you
Good
on
man,
this
I'm good man.
wonderful
And I love the
Thursday?
fact that even without Harrison, we've still managed to shoehorn Arsenal into our podcast, into whatever week we're into now. But Arsenal always seem to make a little appearance. And yeah, I'm sure Harrison is over the moon with that signing. But yeah, I'm good. Excited to have a little chat tonight. Lot to talk about. Loads going on. Football is officially almost back. Can we say it's back? We saying it's back?
Yeah, I think we can say it's back. We can see people throwing and catching footballs. Yeah, football's
Yeah,
back, man.
first game
I'm
next
excited.
Thursday actually. So this time next week, the first game will be, well, not quite getting ready, but it won't be far off. Who is it? The Chargers and the Lions, isn't it? The Hall of Fame game this year.
Yes, yeah, that's right. And I mean, I always find the Hall of Fame game a pretty painful spectacle because, nobody plays in that game, do they? I think it's good for fringe players, but the league hypes it up so much. I'll never forget the year that the Colts had the Packers in the Hall of Fame game when Andrew Luck was still around, and they just randomly cancelled it like 24 hours before the game. It shows nobody really cared about
Well,
us back then either,
yeah, fair point. Although saying that, was it last year that it got cancelled halfway through because of a lightning storm? Was it last year? I think it was,
Yes, yeah,
because I
that's right.
think if I
Yeah.
remember correctly, it was the I know the Bears were playing because it was on Hard Knocks. Yeah,
Yes, that's right. I think it was Bears Packers, right?
we'll go with
From
Bears
memory.
Packers. I can't remember. I just remember the
I
Bears because
think.
they were on Hard Knocks. I'm sure somebody will be frantically messaging off the back of this telling us who it was, and by the time this goes out, we'll have both Googled it. So if we're wrong, we're wrong. But again, if they cancel the Colts
Yeah,
games, I'm sure as hell not
yeah.
going to remember who played last year. Let's put it that way. That being said,
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean,
no, I was just going to say, are
go
you
on,
going
you
to
do, go on,
watch?
you.
Will you watch? Will you watch the highlights?
I mean, I don't think I'm going to be, staying up till
No.
4 a.m. to watch that game, but it's always tempting, isn't it? It's exactly like pre-season. It makes us sit there and genuinely debate, do I go to work on 3 hours sleep tonight to watch somebody who's not even going to make out 50 to, make a mean play that, Colin Coward's going to say is the greatest play in football history. Yeah, it's one of those like interesting periods as a football fan, right? Because like nobody's really
No,
going 100%
no.
yet.
I agree. I think you're right. And the interesting part, I think, comes in because by this stage, you're so desperate for any type of sort of football that you do debate, like you say, whether or not you want to stay up and watch the Colts' third choice quarterback against whoever's random undrafted free agent defensive backs to see who comes out top at sort of 2 o'clock in the morning. But because we're so desperate for any kind of action, you find yourself sort of, if not watching it live, I'd definitely be watching it on sort of on catch up in the morning. I know I will. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. I mean, I think you're a fellow Game Pass user. On Saturday, I kept getting constant notifications
Yeah.
for flag football, and curiosity, caught the cat. And there was like an under 15s game on, and I was thinking, I don't need to be watching this right now. But I wanted to ask if you'd
I
caught any
haven't, I
flag
must
football
admit,
on
I
the
haven't.
weekend.
I do find this time of year the sporting calendar does start to get a bit sparse. So you do find yourself watching things that you probably wouldn't ever usually find yourself watching. I haven't quite got to flag football yet. If and when I get this up on YouTube, people might see I've got an England top on. So I have been watching the Women's Euros. And as a proud Englishman, I have to say I'm buzzing that the Lionesses have got to their third final in a row, which is an incredible achievement. So well done to them. And here's hoping they get the job done on Sunday, although it'll be a tough game. But no, in answer to your question, I haven't quite got to flag football. We talked a bit before we came on. I watched a bit of the Lions game last Saturday, and I'll probably watch that again this coming Saturday. I think that might be quite an interesting topic to explore one day, actually, Nathan. I know we're coming into the new season now, but what sports do people find themselves watching in the off season when their number one choice is off the table? I think we could get some very interesting responses there.
Yeah, for sure. And to anybody who wants to be involved with that content, I'll put Harrison on a "you can't talk about Arsenal" ban for those shows as well, because football will no doubt come into it. Okay, so that is probably a good time to segue into our first sort of agenda point, which is training camp. For complete clarity, day 2 of training camp has only just finished in the UK. You know, the Colts players are in press conferences right now, so that leaves us on day 1 and kind of covering the events of day 1. Now, one of the first things that happened there was Chris Ballard's latest press conference. And I've sort of called this segment hypocrisy or honesty. What did you think of Ballard's press conference, mate? I think we've got some minor technical issues at the moment. Edge just dropped off. I'm sure he'll return in a second. But I'll take this one. I felt like the press conference was quite soft on Ballard. There wasn't a lot of, the kind of usual tough questions that we've kind of become accustomed to in recent Ballard press conferences anyway. The reason I've kind of titled it hypocrisy or honesty is really in relation to the fact that what we saw in winter and in kind of spring almost was, this assumption that Richardson was done. Now, what we're seeing in the press conference is this almost preaching of patience and this preaching of, we've got to give him time. We've got to almost that the job is not done and the job is still there for Richardson to make. And I can see Ed's found his way back in the show. Ed, just a quick kind of recap there. I was talking about the difference in language between Ballard in kind of the off season as opposed to now in how he spoke about Richardson. What did you take away from that? Your audio is gone, mate. I can't hear you at the moment.
Take them.
There you go. You're back.
Yeah, hang on. Let me just.
You're back in the room. Yeah.
Having a few technical
Go
issues
for it.
here with this new system. There we go. Hopefully you can hear me all right now. Yeah, sorry, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, can hear you. Can hear you.
With this, yeah, I think the first thing for me with the comments from Ballard, the interesting one for me was the Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield comparisons, which I don't know if you've already kind of covered that bit off, but I think that's a bizarre thing to kind of compare them to two quarterbacks who are no longer with the teams that drafted them, and also really. Is that kind of the level that you see Anthony Richardson? That's no disrespect to Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold, but I thought that Richardson had a higher ceiling. I know Baker Mayfield potentially, I actually think is a quite underrated quarterback, to be fair, but I think Richardson should and could be a better prospect. So I thought that was strange, saying about comparing him to two quarterbacks who aren't with their teams. And I don't know if you saw the follow-up question. I think it was James Boyd. He asked the question and then followed up. And he just kind of went, yeah, exactly. Like we haven't really answered the question. So yeah, I thought that was a bit bizarre. What were your? I'm assuming you've already gone through your kind of thoughts on it.
No, honestly, I was just kind of trying to segue this in really. For me, I thought it was a real change of pace and almost makes fans think, what's happened? Like, has something happened in the background that we would never know? I mean, obviously, Anthony came in leaner. He's was quite open in that he lost 10 pounds recently. He looked in great shape, probably the most athletic I think we've probably seen him since he was drafted. I just felt it was a complete turn of pace. We've seen Carly mentioning in her latest press conference as well that Anthony still got time to save the job, and I'm almost thinking, as she maybe said to Chris, that Anthony's the starter. We just need to make it look like it's a competition. I don't know. I felt like overall, the only thing I said when you were reconnecting there, mate, was I felt like the press conference was a lot softer than they usually are. No real tough questions for Chris to answer.
Yeah, I mean, can you
What
hear
did
me
you think
okay?
about that?
Yeah, wicked. Yeah, I think that the
Yeah,
one
yeah,
that
can you
I
hear?
found quite interesting, I don't know if you picked up on the bit where he spoke about free agency, and he made a point of kind of reiterating that we were aggressive in free agency this off season, which I thought was interesting because it's obviously something that's in there about he's obviously heard the comments and and kind of reacted to it. But then he kind of said, but in my opinion, we're always active and aggressive in free agency, and then referenced Buckner and Philip Rivers, which was what 2021. So it's like that's 4 years ago, man. Like that's not being that what we're expecting, like four big moves every 4 years kind of thing. Like that's not being aggressive in free agency. And then it was the usual stuff. I think there was a comment made to him about not making the playoffs for the last sort of 4 years, and he did his usual. This isn't pressure. This is I do something I love and I'm passionate about. And pressure is being paycheck to paycheck, which it is, and I get what you're saying, but it felt like a whole lot of deflection, and it sounded to me like somebody who is maybe aware that the pressure is on because he sounded like he didn't want to kind of front it up, and he said about, this, I don't know what, I'm not going to be the GM forever. There will be a new GM at some point. It sounds to me a little bit, I don't know, like he's probably more aware than he's not going to come out in a press conference and go, yeah, by the way, I'm screwed. Like, we've got to win this year, otherwise I'm done. He kind of went so far the other way, in my opinion. I don't know what you kind of thought.
Yeah, and I think to maybe give some kind of added context to that, Carly was quoted in a press conference saying basically that, talking about winning is boring. She wants to talk about being the best. And I thought that was a pretty interesting comment because the Colts have not been the best under Ballard's tenure. And yeah, I think you hit it spot on that there was an element of deflection. There was an element of maybe the chair's a little hot for Chris right now. But anyway, that segues me in wonderfully to day one of training camp. I'm not going to spend much time talking about the stats of the day. I'm sure many Colts fans listening have already seen the stats, but I guess it would be remiss of us not to talk about the quarterback competition before I move it on to some other highlights. Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson had a pretty fair share if you look at the numbers and read local beat reporters' notes. Yes, Jones started with the first team, but Anthony was starting with them in spring, so can you read too much into that? What were your thoughts on what you've seen from the
I think
QBs,
I think
if
it's
anything, Ed?
interesting there about Daniel Jones. I wouldn't have expected anything other than Daniel Jones to take the first lot of first team reps, if I'm being honest with you. After everything that happened in the spring, I personally believe that Jones is in the box seat at the moment for the job. I'm not saying he's got it, but I think that
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
currently ahead. Um, from what I gather and from what I read online and the sort of the small clips that you try and see, it wasn't a day for either of them to write home about, was it? I think is probably the fairest way, but it's only day one, and if you're gonna have a shocker or not a shocker, that's not fair. But if you're gonna start slowly, then that's fair enough. Did I hear or read? I think it was yesterday, because I know we're not talking about day two because that has literally just finished here in the UK. Daniel Jones had a completion to himself. Did I hear and read that?
Yes, that is very true. Big Grover
That
Stewart
was it.
had deflected a pass, and it landed straight back to
Are we claiming
Dan
that?
Jones's hands.
Is he claiming that?
I mean, look, dude, we've been in QB
Yeah, that's
purgatory.
true.
Like,
That's
we'll
true.
take
That's very true.
passes like that. You know, we're Colts fans. We like creativity. And I'm sure Shane would like us to say he drew that up, and that was not some sort of good luck. I thought it was hysterical that the only clip that kind of went quote unquote viral yesterday was both Jones and Richardson throwing incompletions together. Did you see
Possibly.
that
I
video?
don't remember it specifically, but I mean, who posted that? That wasn't the actual Colts themselves, was it?
No, it was kind of like the equivalent of
Right.
kind of like a
Okay.
local beat reporter sort of vibe, and
Okay.
maybe like a local channel, but it's
Right.
it's them in throwing drills. Jones throws a pass on the numbers, which the player drops, and Richardson just misses the target by about six,
Mm.
7 yards over him. And I was thinking, what a good synopsis of this competition, and
Yeah.
maybe what the
Yeah.
competition means.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not started. I mean, Riley Leonard's probably sat there thinking, I've got to be in with a shout here. Yeah. I've got a chance here. Yeah. I don't know, man.
Yeah. Interestingly, the biggest play yesterday of note from the kind of research I've done was a 30-yard go route to Anthony
Yes.
Gould by Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
Nice to see
Absolutely.
Gould making plays again. Last summer he was lighting up many things that Colts fans were reading, and I think he's going to be a name that we will probably be debating over the next few weeks if he has a good preseason. Anyway, have you got anything more to say on the offense before I am super
No, I don't.
excited to
I don't
move
want. I
on
don't want
to
to.
a
I don't want to
part of
hold you. I would
defense?
say I did see that it wasn't just the QBs. There were a lot of dropped catches yesterday. So I think it was. As we're moving on to that area, I think it was definitely a day for the defense yesterday. Let's just say that. But yeah, go for it. 'Cause I know how excited you are to talk about this next particular section. Is there anybody in particular that caught your eye yesterday, Nathan?
There was one. There was one. Any if any of you out there are long-time listeners or new listeners to Southbound, there's a certain player that Ed and I have been very excited about and almost very intrigued by post-draft night, which was Justin Wally, the Colts' third-round draft pick at cornerback. I was reading the reports yesterday of the first play of the ones, and I saw Justin Wally's lined up at outside corner next to Javarius Ward. Man, I'm hyped about
I
this. What are
agree,
your
and just
thoughts?
for context, I will say Nathan has been on this guy from pretty much the day after we drafted him. Without boring people with our lives, I went to bed on the night of day two when he was drafted. I didn't stay up. I woke up. First thing I did was check who we drafted. Saw Justin Wally. Admittedly, wasn't a player I knew a lot about. I'm not even going to pretend that I did. I was like, oh, defensive back, third round, surprising. I was then inundated with messages from Nathan, who had then spent I don't know how long researching, watching him, going back over stuff that he's in, and telling us how super excited he was the fact that we've got this guy. Excitement, that I then started to share. I thought, oh, okay, sounds like we've got someone. We then started reading that the Colts were super high on this guy, weren't they? Drafting him. A lot of people had like a sixth round sort of grading on him, and we took him, pick 82? So it was top 100. So yeah, to see him line up in a room that is crowded, I think is fair to say. Our defensive backs room has kind of gone within the last 12
Absolutely.
months from a real area of weakness to now possibly, arguably, one of the strongest sort of roster areas that we have. Would you agree? And I think that to have him lining up ahead of Jalen Jones and Juju Brents, I think there's a very good chance that this guy, we could see him taking meaningful snaps come September.
Yeah, could not have put it any better myself. I think it's really important to add that this player was handpicked by this defensive staff. they loved him. And that's been really, public recently. So to see him taking, real snaps on day one, snap one, made me very, very excited. I mean, it sounds like a really good day for the corners. Javarius Ward, obviously the Colts' new veteran pickup. The hopes and dreams that, he's going to be the next sort of, Stephon Gilmore, Vontae Davis type player for Indy. Sounds like he had a great day too. I mean, I just wanted to ask you, like, how nice does it feel to have a kind of like a premier name to talk about now in
Totally
that
agree.
Colts
And
defense?
I heard as well that he was up against Pittman in drills. Now that's something I would love
Yep.
to have seen, because I can tell you that would have been an absolute battle. But yeah, to your point, to have a premier name on defense, I put a post up yesterday on my page just saying that after day one of training camp, I am fully prepared to get carried away on how excited I can get about this defense this year. No, it's true though, because we've spoken a lot about last year under Gus Bradley. They call it, the scheme was essentially cover three. I called it standing still. Like, it was literally like, just try and keep everything in front of you, give up yards, and then just try and get aggressive in the red zone. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. And all that happened is we just had teams coming
Yeah.
against us.
Yeah.
And how many players would you see coming against the Colts be like, oh, so and so had a career day? Like, so and so threw for a career day, so and so rushed for a career
Yeah.
day, so and so, got a career day worth of like receiving yards. You think, yes, because our defense just stands still and lets you do it. So I am super excited to see this D this year under Lou Anarumo. New scheme, premier names, like you say. We haven't even spoken about our other sort of free agency signing yet, but Cam Bynum is another player that I'm super excited to see. Playmakers, players that can make things happen on that side of the ball. And you're right, it's been a while, hasn't it? Let's be honest, it's been a while since we can say we've had something like that. So yeah, super excited.
Nice. That probably rounds this section off. I mean, a player that we've regularly spoken about, Leatu Latu, the kind of hopes and dreams of that D line for many Colts fans. Had a great day. Was the premier edge rusher alongside Quitty Pay, which I think is great early signs for this defense, where defensive line is definitely a question, which I'm sure we'll talk about on another show. But before I move us on, Ed, do you have anything else you want to
No,
mention
I
on
think
day one
we've
of
covered
camp?
it quite well, and I think it's just exciting to have the Colts back in our lives. And I'm sure in a couple of weeks when we play Baltimore, we'll have that nice. I don't want to say it. I don't even want to say it. We'll be excited. We'll
I,
be
I didn't
excited.
even want to
Are we
think
saying
about
as Lamar's
that.
not playing, is he? Hopefully. Yeah. No.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Let
absolutely. No,
let's
it's
see
good to
when
have
we
the
get
Colts
there.
back. It's good to be able to talk about actual activities on the field as opposed to ifs, buts, and maybes. So that's what it's that we're excited about. And yeah, day one, there's some positives I think which we've talked about, and there's some bits that we knew were concerns that haven't really gone away after one day, which you wouldn't expect them to. So no, I think that's a good summary of it.
On next week's episode, we will no doubt cover the remaining days of training camp. So please, if you've got any thoughts, any opinions, any questions, reach out to us on our socials or on our Spotify if you want to add a comment, and we will absolutely ask them and debate them for you, or potentially with you,
Yeah,
if you give us
definitely.
enough info. Gives me a great opportunity to move on to the kind of central point of tonight's episode, which is Ed and I taking a tour of the NFC to kind of bring a little bit of attention onto the NFC. Our podcast by design is trying to shine a spotlight, of course, on the Colts. We love the Colts, but on the AFC South in general. So yeah, come on a tour of the NFC with me and Ed. That's probably the
Without
dream
doubt.
holiday for a lot of our listeners. Ed, I'm going to start us off
Oof.
in the NFC North, which is that
Oof.
famous division of any NFL fan knows this division knows teams in it, but just for complete clarity, we've got the Chicago Bears, Detroit Lions, Green Bay Packers, and Minnesota Vikings. I am going to line you up with who are you most excited
Great
by
question. I'm glad you
in
said
this
that
division?
because this, I think, is still one of the toughest divisions to call in all of football, AFC or NFC. There are some amazing teams in this division. There 3 teams make the playoffs last year from this division. It was only the Chicago Bears that didn't, you know, and Minnesota and Detroit went right down to the final day for who took the division and also took the number 1 seed. Like that's how close it was. So in terms of excitement for
Yep.
this year, it's difficult because this is for clarity, and we've spoken about this as well, Nathan, about the Detroit Lions. We're both big on the Lions. Love the story. Love what they've been about the last few years. Fantastic team to watch. Love their head coach. Love the whole ethos that he's built, the whole culture, everything about it. He's basically built that in the last few years himself. But that being said, the team I'm most excited to see in the NFC North this year is the Minnesota Vikings. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why.
Nice.
Because
I
I was
like it.
big on JJ
Yeah,
McCarthy. And I know a lot of people weren't, but I'm quite big on JJ McCarthy. And I think Kevin O'Connell as a quarterback coach, I know he's not a quarterback coach, I know he's a head coach, but the QB whisperer, as he's sometimes referred to, if you look at what he's done
absolutely.
with
Agree.
other quarterbacks and that team, I think he can really get a tune out of JJ McCarthy. I thought the defense last year was elite, and I don't see any reason why it's not going to be elite this year, to be perfectly honest with you. I think they've got one of the
Yep,
premier wide
agree.
receivers in all of football in Justin Jefferson. I think an absolute stud of a player. They've nicked 2 of our offensive line, haven't they? And Ryan Kelly and Will Fries have both rocked up in Minnesota. Will Fries, by the way, I'm
Yep.
probably more disappointed to lose on a side note than Ryan Kelly. If I'm being totally honest with you, it's no disrespect. Kelly was a great servant, but I think Will Fries is on the way up. Personally, I can see why he's took the money at Minnesota. But the point I'm making there about them taking 2 of our offensive line, they've built the offensive line to protect JJ McCarthy. Their defense is still elite. Their
Yeah,
defense is gonna
absolutely.
is gonna get the ball back to JJ McCarthy quite a lot. And I'm super excited to see what this Vikings team can do. So yeah, that's who I'm most excited about. What about yourself?
Yeah, I think it's generally a battle for me because I think you hit the nail on the head. There's only 2 teams in football who have that like ultimate secret weapon for their quarterbacks, and that's Justin Jefferson and the Vikings and Jamar Chase and the Bengals. But the easy answer for me is the Lions. You're probably expecting me to say
Okay,
Detroit right now, but I'm not.
nice.
I'm going to talk about Chicago. Chicago is fascinating for me this year. We were all kind of intertwined in where was Ben Johnson going to land, and of course, fast forward to the 24th of July, he's sitting in Chicago right now. Caleb, of course, had a up and down year last year. By definition, he certainly ended the season stronger than he started. But just think of this offense and just think of what Ben Johnson's going to do. They
Hmm.
added Colson Loveland, 10th overall, tight end out of Michigan. And then in the second round, they had Luther Burden the third, who was kind of everywhere in draft predictions. Some people had him top 3, some people had him way outside of even the top 5. And I just think that, what we've seen Ben Johnson do at Detroit, we're going to see just that same level of just wacky creativeness. And I'm intrigued to see how they keep all the hands busy, man, because, a lot of these guys are going to absolutely, want the ball. You can't give 6 pass catchers the ball at the same time. So what we'll see Chicago do is very, very interesting. And I think this is probably the first year in the last, sorry, Bears fans, 10 years that I've actually thought that you might do something. But very, very exciting times for Chicago with Big Ben coming in. Would be remiss of me to not mention that the Green Bay Packers, there's no reason why we haven't spoken about them, broke a kind of curse that many of their fans have been desperate for in recent years of drafting a wide receiver in the first round of the draft. Really, really interesting to see how that pans out for the Green Bay Packers. But yeah, I think, Ed, we'll round it off with the North. Who do you think is going to win the division?
That's the $1 million question, man. I haven't got a clue, if I'm being honest with you. I think this is the hardest. This one I've got. I think you could legitimately make a claim for all four teams in this division. If you want my honest opinion, I think the Lions they've had a brain drain. They lost their starting centre, haven't they? So I think that's going to be interesting to can they cope with those losses? But they're still a fantastic outfit. Minnesota, obviously, I'm excited for. Chicago, you've made some amazing points there about Chicago, man. That team is going to be so super interesting to see this year. And Green Bay are just winners, aren't they? That's just what they do. So that, for me, this is one of those. I'd have to close my eyes and spin a wheel. Who's going to win this division? I'm going to say Minnesota. I'm going to say Minnesota because that's who I'm excited to see. And they were very close last year, very close. So I think they'll get over the hump. What about yourself?
I'm backing myself. I'm going to go with the Lions.
Okay.
They have who I think is, the best running back in football. Being a Colts fan, we have to believe in running the ball. But
100%.
no, I think the Lions were so hurt last year. It was devastating to watch as a fan of believing in that story. And, they've had a year now to get healthy. They've had a taste of that failure too. I just think they get it done this year. But Chicago could definitely ruin the party for both of these predictions.
Agreed.
Okie doke, let's flip it on the north and let's head south to the NFC
South.
South, home of the Atlanta Falcons, Carolina Panthers, New Orleans Saints, and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm going to line you up again. Who takes your fancy in this division, Ed?
I think Tampa. I know this is the really boring answer, and I appreciate that. They've won it 4 years in a row, but I really like what Tampa can do. I like the way Baker runs that offense. I like their weapons. They've added a few players on defense this summer as well. I think Hassan Reddick's come in. So if they
Yep,
can get
yep.
anything out of him, I think that'll make I think that will help them. I think they've been a team in the NFC as a whole that have been there or thereabouts the last few years. Like a sneaky kind of like, and they've pushed teams close as well. It's not like they'll get to the playoffs and then get blown out. They've been there or thereabouts, and yeah, I kind of I know they lost their OC, didn't they? Liam Cohen. He's obviously come to the AFC South with Jacksonville.
Yep,
But
yep.
they drafted Emeka Egbuka to add to a pretty good wide receiver room. Tristan Wirfs is injured though, isn't he? And he's potentially going to miss a few games at the start of the season, which I think will be a big loss to them. But I think when I was looking at it, their schedule's kind of backloaded. I think they've maybe got a tougher start and it gets not easier, but I think it like
I know
rounds
what you
out.
mean.
So
Yeah,
a bit like last year, they kind of started off slowly and then they're again that timing, they kind of hit stride around November time, right to make a playoff run, and then go into playoffs. So yeah, I like Tampa. Excited, and I think they'll win the division. That's kind of where I'm going with that. I'm going to leave it quite simple.
I like it. Yeah, I mean, I definitely won't add more to the Bucks. I think you've done a wonderful job. Other than I think it was really imperative that they kept that wide receiver room together, and just good to see in modern day sport, Chris Godwin choosing kind of loyalty over a bag of money with the New England Patriots. We do not see that enough in sport.
No, although he's got a bad injury as well, hasn't he?
Yes, yeah. I
I
don't
think
think we'll
he's
see him early, but maybe we'll see him a
no,
little bit later from what I'm reading.
yeah, which is a shame. But I agree with your point 100%. Loyalty isn't something you see a lot of, which is again fair enough.
Yeah, I'm gonna head down to Atlanta, which I
Okay,
think is the kind of story of the what if. In reality, there's a few what ifs. We'd probably have to have a whole episode dedicated to Atlanta to kind of get through them all. But I mean, the premier storyline is, of course, with Michael Penix Jr., quarterback for Atlanta, of course, controversially drafted when they just given Kirk Cousins $150 million.
man.
But this is Michael Penix's team now. A fascinating passer in college. Someone who you can really kind of admire. They've kept Drake London there. Another what if on offense is Kyle Pitts. Feels like Kyle Pitts has been in the league for 20 years now, and I think he's still
Yeah,
only 23.
yeah,
Is he going to take the jump now? But of course, that sort of fascinating draft night trade where not only did they have Michael Williams on the edge, but then they traded back in for the
James Pierce,
name
wasn't it?
James Pierce Jr. Spot on.
Yeah, from Tennessee. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, just a kind of little bit of a head scratcher trade there for me, but it'd be kind of remiss of me not to mention Atlanta because I'm hopeful that I'm going to be watching the Colts beat them in November. So that's definitely a starting point. I mean, I don't have much to say on the other two teams. Tech McMillan is fascinating for the Panthers. What's your thoughts on hit that landing spot?
yeah, and I think it's also interesting to see if Bryce Young kind of continues that sort of step forward he took towards the end of last year, and they've got Xavier Leggett, their other wide receiver that they drafted year before last. So it looks like they're starting to build something. I still think that they're way off, but they'll be more interesting to watch. I think with Bryce Young, hopefully starting to figure it out at the NFL level. And as for the other team in that division, New Orleans Saints, I think they're a shout for potentially picking top three next year. I mean, I can't see, and that's that. I don't want to be disrespectful because I know what it's like to have your team sort of disrespected by people that aren't maybe as close to it as you. But I'm struggling to, I know, Kellen Moore's gone in there, good offensive mind. They've got Brandon Staley or Braden Staley, Brandon Staley, Brandon or
Brandon
Braden, you know
Staley.
who I mean. Yeah, as he's gone in as defensive coordinator. They were together in LA, weren't they?
Yeah, yeah. Staley
So
was
being
the Grim
head
Reaper of
coach.
the early Justin Herbert. Just a head scratcher that he didn't get fired earlier. But sorry to interrupt you. I had to
No, no,
get
no,
that in.
no. You're fine. And I can't see a lot for New Orleans fans to be particularly excited about. I mean, their quarterback room makes ours look like flipping Hall of Fame quality, doesn't it? Let's be honest with you.
Yeah, the quarterback room being Tyler Shuck, drafted
Yeah,
on draft night, of course, for any Saints fans who maybe are listening, as well as Spencer Rattler,
Spencer
who we
Rattler.
did
Yeah,
see suit up last year, but again, a lack of inspiration in that Saints offense. And I, I must admit, I was kind of gobsmacked that Kellen Moore took the job. I mean, it is a business. They're in cap hell, from what I read as well. Like, does he even make it through 3 years of development there before they sack him and go with someone else?
I totally agree. It's one of those. Did he look at it and think, "Am I never going to get another opportunity?" So you have to take the
Yeah,
opportunities when they're there, which I understand. But equally, that's a job that you'd want experienced hands, really, unless, like you say, they've said 3 years you can build it out from sort of scratch. That must be the only way that you're going to have sold it, I'd have thought, because it doesn't look appealing, does it, from the outside? No disrespect.
yeah, and absolutely no disrespect meant by any of this. For complete transparency, we are football fans, um, and we're just trying to call it as we see it. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
agree with
Nothing,
you.
nothing against the Saints.
I think the Buccaneers will win the South, and I don't think there's much more we need to say on the South. What about you?
No, agreed.
No?
I agree. Happy to move on. Yeah.
Okie doke, let's go east to the NFC
East.
East. Again, a hyper-famous division in the NFL with not only America's team, but the Big Blue too. Of course, being Dallas Cowboys, New York Giants, Philadelphia Eagles, and the Washington Commanders. Same question again. There's a theme here. Who
Yeah,
takes your
no.
fancy in the East?
I say, who takes my fancy? A team that I think they're just going to miss the playoffs, but I think they'll be better than people give them credit for. America's team. I do
Okay.
think Dallas. I do think Dallas aren't going to stink the place out quite as bad as they did last year, and the reason for that is if they have a. Well, I mean, they did, didn't they? I mean, what was it? They finished. Was it 6-11? They finished last year.
Yeah, it
You
was
know,
another
Mike
tragic
McCarthy.
year.
It just fell apart, really, didn't it? You know, it once Dak went down, it was kind of like I think there was they had the Thanksgiving game, didn't they, last year against the New York Giants, and it was very much a case of people, how can we flex this one out? Because I don't know who's going to watch this on Thanksgiving, even in America. But no, I think Dallas, if Dak's back healthy, they've obviously added George Pickens, who is a talented football player, is what I will say, a very talented football player. And if he lines up opposite CD Lamb, you know, who again is a very, very good wide receiver, by the way. Just in that, not quite in the same tier as the ones we've already mentioned, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, but is definitely up there as one of the best in the league, in my opinion. Like Jake Ferguson, tight end, good, not great, but a good player and a good option. And when Dak's healthy, they tend to win at least sort of 10 games. They've invested in their offensive line. Again, if you look, they've got three players by the name of Tyler potentially lining up in their offensive line. So team Tyler, you know, Micah Parsons, I would assume that deal gets done.
I
But
mean,
again, you've
it's
got a
going
very
to. Go on, you, go on, you.
no, I was just going to say, I assume that deal gets done, and I think he's again a very, very, very good, very, very good player. I'm oh, excited is maybe a stretch because Dallas are on so much that I can never be excited to watch them because they're rammed down my throats like every single week for the next, even in the UK, they're always on, like all the time. But I think they're going to be better, but I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. So that's my kind of hot take. I think they'll be better than people think, but not quite good enough to make the playoffs. And new head coach Schottenheimer, have I said his
Yeah,
name right? You know what I'm like
yeah.
with names. I think will do a good, if not great job. And I think that's what Dallas will be this year. Good, not great, but they won't be bad. That's kind of what I'm trying to say.
I think I want to make a very quick point on Micah. I think his contract's going to be hysterical. You know, the edge market right now is just throwing money at players, and Micah has proved that he can play about 20 positions. So I think Jerry's going to have to dig very, very deep when
Yeah.
they eventually wrap it up. Team that I'm really, really excited to see this year is the New York Giants.
Oh, cool.
I'm a huge fan of Malik Neighbours, who, you know, at times last year, although obviously he had a fantastic rookie year, you know, I think he had over 100 receptions, which is just, you know, awesome for a rookie. But uh, you know, Daniel Jones was definitely restrictive for him. Whereas now, you know, we're going to potentially see Russell Wilson throw in, you know, Malik the ball. And, you know, if there's one thing Russ can do is throw a beautiful deep ball.
That's true.
So I think we see the kind of neighbours maybe unleashed a little bit more. I know the line has got a lot better. They, of course, drafted a new quarterback this year. I mean, you know, do you think he even makes it on the field this year?
Jackson Dart.
Jackson Dart?
That's a great question. Yes, I can see a world where it happens. I think ideally they would want to maybe get him in. I suppose it depends how the year goes. I think if they get towards sort of December time and they're out of the playoffs contention, which most people would assume they would be, then I would say, yeah, you've got to chuck him in and give him a go, see what you've got. So yes, I can see a world where it happens. Russ has only signed for 1 year, hasn't he, Russ Wilson?
Correct, yeah. Yes,
Yes,
you know, potential stopgap, yeah.
Yeah, so I would think that once the Giants, because their schedule as well is horrendous. I think it's the worst schedule in the entire football league this year.
Yeah.
So I would expect them to not potentially be in contention come end of November, December time. So yeah, I would say yeah, chuck the kid out there, see what he can do. You got to see what you got. Do you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think we'll see that. I mean, you know, depending on where you look, Brian Daboll is either described as on the hottest seat in the league or
Mm,
sitting on ice, and they gave him that because they feel like he'll turn him into the next Josh Allen, like, he did with Josh Allen. And I mean, you know, if there's one thing Russell Wilson's been the last 2 years, it's maybe a little bit uninspiring at times, a little bit inconsistent. So I agree with you. You kind of got to see what you've got, and I'm sure that Dayball and Co will be thinking of their jobs if the Giants have
mm.
a rough start and will want to show something. The Giants D line is what I am fascinated with. I'll definitely be tuning in to Giants highlights this year. Obviously, immense draft capital spent there this year. Of course, added to Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns. That three man rotation is just terrifying to think of.
Agree.
I would not want to be in that division as a tackle this year.
No, I agree.
What do you want to say on the Eagles? They're the best team in football. Like, what more can we say on the
Don't think
Eagles?
you can. In preparation for this, I've looked at the brief look at everybody's sort of rosters just to get some highlights because it's always in the off season. You look at a player and go, "Oh, I didn't know he landed there." Like Matt Gay's landed with the Washington Commanders, which I'd completely missed if I'm being honest with you. Once he left our building, I didn't know if you'd seen that when I was looking at that. So I hope they don't try and kick from anything more than about 20 yards this year because they'll be in for a shock. Sorry, little dig. Um, the Eagles, man, their roster is just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's the best roster in football. There is a legitimate chance of them going back to back this year. I think the only thing that stops the Eagles going back to, or not the only thing, that's not fair. One of the things that stops the Eagles going back to back is themselves. They do tend to be prone to a little bit of, when it goes wrong, doesn't it? Sirianni has proven himself to be a great coach, but he is combustible, I think would be a fair um, sort of summary. But man, that roster is just ridiculous. And they added a player that we all liked in the draft, in Jihad Campbell, who doesn't even have to come in and play. I know they've lost a few bits, but they're just unstoppable, to be honest with you. Am I right in saying that a team hasn't repeated in the NFC East for something like 20 years? Like
Yeah,
repeat division winners?
it's a very sporadic division, isn't it?
Yeah,
Every year it tends to have one of the biggest shocks of the year.
yeah.
Um, yeah. I mean, the only question mark for me on Philly is, can Sirianni recruit that superstar coordinator again? He's gone from
Mm.
Shane Steichen straight to Kellen Moore, and they're like elite offenses every year. But yeah, the Eagles, best team in football. If you're new to the league, just go watch some Eagles highlights. They're basically the Georgia Bulldogs, but they're very, really good.
Yeah, I mean, I would say go for it. Just watch Saquon Barkley highlights because that's pretty much what 95% of it will be is just him tearing one off for about a mile and no one being able to get near him. But yeah, unbelievable team and deserved Super Bowl champions. No question.
Yeah,
No
completely.
question. No question.
Commanders, very quickly, obviously, the love story of the NFL last year was Jaden Daniels taking the Commanders back to the playoffs,
Yeah.
having an absolutely incredible game against Philadelphia. Yes, they came short, but they put up an absolute fight, and it was a true shootout for, three
Yeah, yeah.
quarters. Some big new names in Washington, the biggest being Deebo Samuel,
Yeah.
coming over from the 49ers. Scary Terry McLaurin is holding out. That is definitely one to watch for the league, really. McLaurin is, an awesome wide receiver that I'm sure many teams would take. Always gets linked with Indianapolis too. I think he's an Indy native, so
Okay.
always gets linked to us. Yeah, Washington, are they going to get, the sophomore slump, let's call it, with Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden? Or do you think they're going to shock some people? What are your quick thoughts on the Commanders?
I think quick thoughts on Commanders is they've done their, they've fortified the line, haven't they? Both with the draft and off-season moves. They took Laramie Tunsil from the Texans, and they also drafted a tackle as well, I believe. So they're obviously trying to build around Jaden Daniels. I think that they won something like 6 or 7 one-score games last year, which you can look at that one way or another. It's either luck or skill, or and that included that incredible Hail Mary. Do you remember against the Chicago Bears when
Yeah,
I can't remember who it
yeah.
was, the defensive back who was giving it to the crowd, turned around and the ball was sailing over his head, which is one of the all-time NFL moments, I might add. So you look at that and you think, well, that's fantastic, but you're probably not. I'm not saying that was luck, but there's a lot that goes in your favour in those sorts of games. And you're right. I think they pushed Philly all the way, but Philly just took over in the end, didn't they, with the fourth quarter? But I would say about Washington quickly, yes, I think they'll be there or thereabouts. I don't think they'll win the division, but they'll be there or thereabouts. They did give me two of my favourite moments of the season last year. One was that Hail Mary. The other was, do you remember when Philly were doing the brotherly shove on the goal line? And it was Frankie Louv who just got fed up in the end and just kept jumping up, and to the point that the referee said, if you carry on doing this, I'm going to award a touchdown.
Yeah, maybe
It's
a
just one of
live
the another just
demonstration of
yeah,
just
it's
the,
just
the kind of
absolute
annoyance. Yeah.
yeah. But it was just brilliant because the game had gone and it was just like that's it, I'm done. Yeah, but yeah, that was great. So yeah, quick thoughts yourself.
I agree with you. I think you gave it a great summary. I mean, I think the Eagles will win this division quite comfortably. Are you in agreement?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I am.
Yeah, cool. Last but not least is the NFC West, home of the Arizona Cardinals, the LA Rams, the San Francisco 49ers, and the Seattle Seahawks. Again, I'm just going to ask you to talk me through kind of, what's really getting you excited about this division.
I think this is a sneakier, tougher division than people maybe give it credit for. I actually quite like this division, and the team that I'm most excited to see in this division is the Arizona Cardinals. Now,
Okay.
I am sneaky quite high on them this year. I'm not going to lie. Now, they've got a good, if not great, quarterback, Kyler Murray. He's serviceable at an NFL level. They've got Jonathan Gannon into his third year, so he was obviously the defensive coordinator at Philly and took that job the same year that Shane came over to Indy. He's built quite a good defense, and I'm quite excited to see what that can do. Like I say, I like the offense. They've obviously got Marvin Harrison Jr., who they drafted last year. Trey McBride, great tight end. They run the ball quite well. And I think they could be a sneaky outside bet for a wild card spot this year. I don't know why, other than that, but I quite like what they're doing. Like I say, when I was looking at the roster, they drafted a player I know you were high on, Will Johnson. That he fell into the second round in the end because I think there was issues with his knee. And they also drafted Walter Nolan, who I think might have an injury now, but defensive tackle. They drafted him in the first round as well. So they've built out the defense. They've brought in Josh Sweat from Philly.
Yep. Yep.
So they've spent a bit and they've built that defense. Like I say, I like the offense already. I think they've got some good parts on there, and I think this is a team that could be ready to maybe take the next step in a division that, like I say, is sneaky tough, but also you've got a couple of teams. I think you might be talking about one of them that are in transition or are in a position where you can maybe take advantage of them. So I quite like Arizona this year. I'm not going to lie. That's a team that I've got my eye on.
I like it. I was not expecting you to open with the Cardinals, and I'm very glad you did because I don't have to talk about them now. The team that I am just in love with in this division is the Los Angeles Rams. I think, they just do things at a completely different rate to any other franchise. I mean, we've been in a position where you lose your franchise guy like they did with Aaron Donald. And it took them about 2 months to sort it out. They drafted Jared Verse and they drafted his teammate, which the name is eluding me,
Braden Frisk.
Braden
Braden
Frisk.
Frisk. Yeah.
They drafted his teammate, and the D line is just as good. And Verse looks like he's going to be an absolute superstar. I'm so glad that they've kept all of Stafford. Obviously, they've lost Cooper Kupp, but Puka Nakua is just a gem, really, to watch. He's one of my favourite players in football. They're coached well. I mean, like, I can honestly see the Rams being in the NFC Championship game. I think they
Brilliant.
are the team to beat in this division. I mean, I think the real true dark horse in this division is Seattle this year.
Okay.
As much as I want to say the Niners, but the Niners lost like 9 players, I think, on their defense and had to draft 7
Yeah.
replacements. Are they going to get there? I don't know. But just fascinated to see what the Rams do. And I mean, we could see them win, every division game this year. It's a fascinating team. Where's your head at on Seattle? Obviously, bringing in Sam Darnold.
Yeah, so when I said that there's a couple of teams in transition, and I thought the LA Rams were not the team I was thinking in transition, I'm with you. Everything you've just said there, I think the Rams are built to win now, 100%. So I'll say that bit. But Seattle, interesting because I don't really know, if I'm being honest with you, where they brought in Sam Darnold, but they let Geno go and then replaced him with Sam Darnold. They let DK Metcalf go and replaced him with Cooper Kupp. They've drafted who did they draft in the first? I can't even remember who they drafted in the first round
They
now.
drafted Nick.
Hang on,
No, Emin went
Gray
in
Zabel.
the.
Gray
Yeah, Grey
Zabel, I
Zabel,
think,
the
yes, who
O-lineman.
actually was a pretty good draft pick. Actually, saying that, um, I think the Seahawks are in a bit of a rebuild mode. That's the impression that I kind of get from my very afar look, and that's what I say about the transaction. And it could be a time for the Cards to sneak in. Listening to you say them as a dark horse makes me think that you might be slightly higher on them. So I'm interested to hear what your kind of thoughts are.
I mean, I'm a huge fan of Jackson Smith and Jigba,
Okay.
the
Yep.
young wide receiver in Seattle, and I think with DK gone and just like him sort of having a more safer passer, I would say. Well, if last year's anything to go off in Darnold, we could see JSN become a 110, 120 target player. Next season, and I think coming out of college he was deemed the best thing Ohio State had created in recent years, and that was ahead of Marv too. Obviously who you
Yeah.
spoke
Yeah.
about there. Yeah, I think JSN's going to take a huge step forward, and I just think Darnold, man, like you're going to stand on 2 camps, aren't you? You're either going to be in the camp that Kevin O'Connell is the quarterback whisperer and just,
Mhm.
makes any quarterback good, or you're going to be in the camp of, no, Sam was always this good, and the Jets kind of, was just a really bad part of his story. But yeah, I mean, who do you think is going to win this division?
The LA Rams, without missing a beat. I'm really high on the Rams. I don't want to go over what you've already, because I think you covered it brilliantly. But I think the Rams are built to win now, and I'm excited. I'm going to the London game this year
Nice.
in part because I wanted to go and see Matty Stafford. Um, because I don't think that he's going to come back to England. I don't think he'll be around for much longer, and I don't think the next time the Rams come to England, I don't think he will be the quarterback. And he's a player that I really like and admire. So that's sort of twisted my arm on that one, to be honest with you.
No, it's a good show, future Hall of Famer, right? And,
Yeah.
I remember feeling just as excited when Detroit came to London a few years ago, and I was lucky enough to
Yeah.
watch him there, but Megatron was injured. He had the ankle injury, so he didn't suit up. I was gutted.
Yeah.
But no, I'm in agreement. I think the LA Rams will win the division. I can't believe we haven't really talked about San Francisco that much, but I just think that, if you follow the NFL, Brock Purdy was the big kind of, is he going to stay, is he going to go type of move. And they've lost Deebo Samuel. Ricky Pearsall had a good season last year, the rookie they drafted out of Florida. So it's transition. Is Christian McCaffrey's ankle going to hold up even? Do you think I've missed anything on the
No, I think
Niners?
you're right. I think you're right. I think the other thing with Ricky Pearsall is he's on the pup list at the moment, along with Brandon Ayuk. So at the moment, I think their wide receiver room consists of Juwan Jennings. So I think that is a real concern. You've got one of the all-time elite tight ends in George Kittle. You've
Hmm.
got a one-legged running back. If he can get back to his full fitness, that would be great. Because run CMC, he's a great, he's fantastic to watch, isn't he? We all love a running back when they tear one off. There's nothing better to see in football. The only thing I would say about the Niners, possibly to go in their favour, is I think their strength of schedule isn't that difficult, and I think that when I was looking at the over/under, I think their over/under is like 10.5 wins,
Yeah.
which I think says more about their strength of schedule than it does about them, because I'm not high on the Niners this year. And again, that's no disrespect. I think they're in a rebuild mode. I think they've got to rebuild, and I think the Rams will take that division.
Yeah, good stuff. So yeah, tour complete. That was us taking you around the NFC, guys. We've been going for quite some time. So if you're still with us by this point, we appreciate you. I wanted to end on a very light note and kind of lean into what our kind of host Harrison likes to do. Um, he loves a question of kind of favourites and worsts, but I'm going to keep it with favourites. Ed, I asked you before we come on to pick me three of your favourite players in the NFC right now.
Yep.
Over to you.
Yeah, so I think two we've already spoken about. One we've just spoken about a lot. Matty Stafford, love the guy. One of my all-time favourites. Had him as the best quarterback in the NFC for a long time. So him. Another player who I love to watch is Saquon. Yeah, how can you not like watching Saquon Barkley? I just think he's just everything that you would want from an elite running back. He is the elite running back. The last one, I was trying to think of a defensive player because I was very conscious I've gone on offense twice, but I'm just an offensive kind of guy, I suppose. Offensive, you can make of that what you will. No, Taysom Hill, New Orleans Saints, right? Just
I
because
love it. I love
we
it.
we talk about favourite players, but just a gadget player that will come in for sort of random plays. He's a tight end, is he a quarterback? Who knows? Is he a fullback? Who knows? He's just going to come on and he's either going to throw it or just run it down your throat. And I love that. I love that kind of element of almost backyard schoolboy football in the elite level. So yeah, Taysom Hill is my third. What about you?
I I've gone for maybe some that'll catch you out, but will also show how long I've been watching the sport. Um, First one is Jordan Mailata, the
Yeah,
tackle out of Philadelphia. I just think the guy is the best tackle in football. An absolute joy to watch. He's just a machine in pass protection, in everything he does, really. I would never be able to answer this without putting Jameer Gibbs in there. My opinion, the best back in the league, who's going to take an absolute catastrophical jump this year and kind of solidify himself as that like premier back in football. And the last
nice.
one might surprise you. It's a member
Go
of
on.
the old guard. It's Harrison Smith, safety out of Minnesota Vikings. He's
Okay,
been
yeah,
one
yeah.
of my Ian and one of my very close mates back home. He's just been one of our favourite players over the last like 10
Nice.
years. The
Yeah,
guy is just ageless almost, plays
yeah.
hard every year. And he's been like an anchor of Vikings teams that I've watched now, for almost 10, 12 years. So I will always root for Harrison Smith.
Like it. I like that. I like that. So we've gone for two kind of headline players between us and then a sort of wild card option at the end.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
nice.
Absolutely.
Nice. Nice. Cool.
Okay, guys. I'm gonna wrap it up there. Thank you very much for joining us. for tonight's show. It's been great chatting to you, mate. Next
Yeah,
week,
man,
I'm
definitely.
sure we'll be back to kind of three-headed Hydra as Harrison makes his triumphant comeback. And yeah, join us next week, guys, for what I'm sure will be a very heavily centered show on the Colts training camp.
100%.
Ed, anything to say before we log off, mate?
No, absolutely not. Been a pleasure, Nathan. Really enjoyed tonight. And yeah, we'll chat to you all next week, everyone. See you later.
Peace.
Cheers. Stop.